My wife said, "You're sleeping on the couch until you apologize." I stared at the doorway like a kid in timeout. The crime, helping the new neighbor, Kayla Monroe, carry a box from her trunk to her porch. That's it. No numbers, no winks, just 40 seconds of decency on Tuesday. I'm Eric Dawson, 38, a project manager. Natalie called it flirting, called it punishment. I said, okay. Not surrender, just a marker. If peace means confessing to something I didn't do, that's not peace. That's tribute. Night one on the couch taught me the language of springs. By morning, ready to apologize, I poured coffee. Not for that. Her eyebrow did the math, certain I'd fold by the weekend. I turned chaos into floor plans. Give me a boundary, and I'll build around it. She gave me a couch. I started measuring doors. Because somewhere between a tape line and a keypad, I realized it wasn't about Kayla's box at all. It was about whether my own wife thought I was a man she could break. I'm a project manager by trade, which mostly means I wake up every day to problems and put them in a line. Schedules, budgets, people who don't talk to each other. My job is to make them cooperate. At home, I try to do the same. Pay the mortgage on time, keep the gutters clean, replace filters when the little sticker says so. Nothing heroic, just the ordinary work that keeps a roof steady. Natalie says I take comfort in checklists. She's not wrong. When life turns messy, I reach for a pencil and a plan. Dinner is simple: sheet pan chicken, a podcast, then dishes by hand because the dishwasher leaves spots. It's a small ritual, but it steadies me. I used to believe that if you show up, do your part, and speak plain, the people you love will meet you in the middle. That belief held for years, until the night a 40-second favor became a federal case. Natalie is smart in a way that moves rooms. She can pitch a half-baked idea at 9 a.m. and have a team excited by lunch. Marketing fits her. Color boards, timelines, a dozen plates spinning. She likes things tidy, brand safe, and on message, including me. If I'm a level, she's a laser line. When she's stressed, the line narrows. She edits my stories for tone, corrects my grocery choices, asks why I bought generic trash bags when we always buy the scented ones. None of that is abuse. It's structure. And most days I didn't mind. We were a decent team, 2 containers that nested. But lately I'd noticed little audits: who I texted, how long I lingered at the mailbox, whether I laughed too easily with the barista. I chalked it up to a rough quarter at work and her mother's constant commentary. Then Kayla moved in across the street and the red laser found something to trace. They arrived on a Tuesday, the kind of day that doesn't promise anything. A rented pickup, 2 plants drooping in the sun, a blue cooler with peeling stickers. Kayla is young, mid-20s, athletic, the kind of energy that makes you remember your 20s like they were yesterday. Jordan looked like a guy I'd have a beer with. Ball cap, tired smile, polite thank yous. I was dragging the blue bin to the curb when I saw Kayla fighting a box that had clearly lost the will to live. "Need a hand?" I asked from the sidewalk, staying in daylight in view of half the street. She nodded, we lifted, and I followed her to the porch. No flirting, no lingering, no swapping numbers, just neighborly gravity. I told them trash day is Thursday and that the mail carrier hides packages behind the left pillar. Jordan said, "Appreciate you, man." I waved, turned back to the driveway, and felt the prickle you get when a window shade moves. I knew which window it was before I looked. The front room, Natalie's favorite perch when she's between Zooms, gives a perfect angle on the street. The shade snapped shut like a mouth deciding it had said enough. I wasn't worried. Not really. I replayed the moment as I rinsed my hands at the garage sink. 1 box, 40 seconds, a thanks, and a welcome to the neighborhood. The kind of thing my dad would have called common decency. Inside, the house smelled like lemon cleaner. Natalie was at the kitchen island with her laptop open, not typing. She didn't look up. I set the mail down and said, "New couple across the street finally moved in." She asked, "How heavy was the box?" Not, "Who are they?" Not, "What's their name?" The question hung there like a curtain rod without brackets. I said, "Awkward heavy." She closed the laptop, and for the first time all week, I felt off balance. "You were awfully friendly," she said, the way people say interesting when they mean wrong. I told her I helped for less than a minute. She said, I watched you. I said, then you saw what happened. She said, I saw you smiling. I said, I'm neighborly, not married to a scowl. The back and forth wasn't loud, but it wasn't soft. For older folks who've argued through mortgages and holidays, you know that tone. Two people choosing words like tools. She brought up patterns, how I chat too long at the mailbox, how the barista knows my order too well. I laughed at the idea that routine equals romance, which did not help. She asked if Kayla was my type. I said my type is someone who trusts me. That was the match. Natalie's jaw went set, and something colder than anger came into the room. Don't gaslight me, she said. Suddenly we weren't talking about a box. We were talking about reality. It arrived clean, like an email subject line. You're sleeping on the couch until you apologize. No jury, no closing arguments, just sentencing. It's funny how a living room can shift under your feet. Same sofa, same rug, but now it's a holding cell with throw pillows. I could have negotiated. I could have said, let's cool off and talk tomorrow. Instead I said, okay. Her eyes widened, like she'd thrown a rope and expected me to pull back. That okay was a hinge, not surrender, not victory, just a door swinging to a different hallway. She added terms, until you admit what you did. I asked, what did I do? You flirted, she said. I pictured the porch, the box, the porch again, and tasted copper. I grabbed a blanket from the linen closet and set it on the couch. She waited for me to fight. I didn't. Sometimes the most respectful thing you can say is nothing. Sometimes silence is a mirror. Older backs know the truth of couches. They're built for short visits, not sleep. By midnight, I had mapped every spring. At 2 a.m., I questioned every life choice, including the cheap blanket. At 3, I found a groove that fit my shoulder like a pothole. I thought about marriages I've seen implode, friends who yelled, people who left, people who stayed and turned into furniture. I promised myself I wouldn't become decor. Around dawn, the coffee maker clicked on. I sat up slow, spine complaining, and padded to the kitchen. Natalie was already there, robe tied perfect. She didn't say good morning. She said, ready to apologize? I shook 2 Advil into my hand and said, not for helping someone carry a box. Her sigh had a script to it, the kind meant to cue my lines. I poured coffee, burned my tongue, and realized the day had chosen me anyway. I'd have to choose back. Mornings are where grown-ups live, lunches to pack, shirts to iron, emails to send apologizing for emails you haven't sent. I took a shower that repaired maybe 10% of the night. Natalie dressed for work like a commercial, perfect blouse, necklace that says competence. She asked if I'd be making this a thing. I said I hoped not. She asked if I'd texted the neighbor. I said I didn't have her number. That line mattered to me more than it should have. There's an age where you understand that boundaries aren't fences to trap you. They're lines that keep your name clean. I kissed the air near Natalie's cheek. She gave me a shoulder. On the drive to the office, the radio host joked about aging knees, and for the first time I laughed alone. By lunch, the couch had become a plan. Not revenge, not a stunt, a project. And projects, I know how to run. There's a kind of peace that comes when you stop begging for the wrong yes. I made a list on a yellow pad. Pillow, decent sheet, earplugs, support for the lower back. I wasn't planning to live on a couch forever. I was planning not to apologize for a lie. After work, I tidied the living room like a guest who cares. Folded blanket, coiled charger, glass in the sink. Natalie watched without speaking, which felt louder than words. I told her I'd be up early and out of her way. She said, "You're being dramatic." I said, "I'm being specific." The difference mattered. That night, I slept a little better, maybe from exhaustion, maybe from choosing a lane. Before I closed my eyes, I looked at the hallway. There were 3 doors: bedroom, bathroom, guest room. I'd never noticed how the guest room doesn't collect light. It swallows it. The thought landed soft. Some spaces wait their turn. Day 2 began with a familiar test. Ready to apologize? She asked it like a fast, casual cashier. Same script, different customer. I stirred my coffee, stared at the steam, and said, "I'm ready to talk whenever you're ready to hear me." She said, "Just say you're sorry." I said, "For what I didn't do?" She rolled her eyes, the universal sign for a conversation that has left the building. If you're over 30, you know this dance. The one where love turns into a customer service call, each of you on hold, listening to music you hate. I left for work with my jaw unclenched. On the way, I called my buddy Chris and told him I might borrow his truck this weekend. "You moving?" he asked. "Just moving a point," I said. "You good?" he asked. "Working on it." After we hung up, I knew the next step wasn't louder words. It was better furniture. That evening, the couch looked like a verdict I hadn't appealed. I opened the guest room door and stood in air that smelled like cardboard and old paint. Boxes, a futon, and the spare vacuum, our museum of things we can't throw away. I pulled the sheet tight across the futon, tested the middle, and felt the bar kiss my spine. Not great, but better than the couch. I stacked 2 boxes to make a nightstand, set a glass of water on top, and slid my phone to Do Not Disturb. Natalie appeared in the doorway, arms crossed. "Too uncomfortable for you?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "Then apologize." "No," she smirked, as if the scoreboard had flickered back in her favor. "Enjoy the futon." I looked at the door frame, measuring it with my eyes the way I measure anything I plan to fix. A simple thought arrived and refused to leave. Doors take locks, locks take codes, and codes don't argue. The guest room wasn't a room yet. It was where cardboard went to retire and the vacuum pretended to work. I started by dragging the futon to the center and shaking out the dust like I was waking up an old dog. Box by box I sorted: donate, trash, keep. I found a college sweatshirt that still fit in theory, and a photo strip from a county fair where Natalie and I looked like the future didn't weigh anything. I kept both and kept moving. There's a peace that comes from order, even when your heart's a mess. I set the futon under the window to trick my back into believing this was a bed. Then I closed the door, sat, and listened. Houses talk when you're quiet. The air vent rattled. The hallway clock clicked. In the silence, a sentence formed. If she gave me the couch as a sentence, I'd give myself a plan as an appeal. I didn't buy a throne. I bought a plan. Online, late, with the steady rhythm of a man who has priced out a life before. Memory foam topper, decent sheets, a real pillow, the kind with weight, earplugs for weekend wine nights, a small lamp that looks like it knows when to be kind. If you've ever rebuilt a garage or a habit, you know this feeling. A cart that isn't impulse, it's structure. The total climbed. I pictured my back forgiving me. I pictured sleep that didn't feel like punishment. I added a surge protector because I've met enough electricians to respect power. I hesitated over a rug, then added it. Floors matter more than people admit. The right one softens the whole idea of standing. At checkout, the screen asked, "Are you sure?" I smiled. I was sure about very little that week, but I was sure I wouldn't apologize for a lie, and that seemed like a start. The box with the topper arrived in a tight roll, like hope you had to unspool. I cut the plastic and the foam breathed out, slow and stubborn, like a man stretching after a long drive. I spread it over the futon and pressed my palm into it, watching the imprint fade. Memory foam, they call it. I wondered what it would remember about me. Nights I didn't sleep, mornings I stood up anyway. The first lie down wasn't magic, but it was mercy. Less metal, less bruise. I put on clean sheets and tucked the corners the way my mother taught me, hospital tight. Natalie passed by the door and paused. "Upgrading?" she asked. "Improving," I said. "A small difference, big enough to keep." I shut the door and lay back, listening to the sound of the foam settling. There's a moment when something new becomes part of your house. It happened then. The room exhaled and took me with it. I'm not 20. I don't need neon everything. But a small TV helps at 1 a.m. when the mind insists on running laps. Marketplace had a decent one. I picked it up, wiped fingerprints that weren't mine, and set it on a solid second-hand desk. A mini fridge slid in under the window, humming like a well-behaved dog. Water, a couple of protein shakes, 2 beers because I'm not a monk. I didn't ask Natalie to help. I didn't announce anything. I kept the living room spotless for her space and kept this room honest for mine. When the fridge kicked on, I felt something ordinary and enormous. Relief. Not victory, just the sense that I could take care of myself without turning our house into a battlefield. I sat in the recliner I'd found cheap and thought about every uncle I've seen nap like a champion. I pulled the lever, leaned back, and heard a sound I hadn't heard in weeks, my own body unclenching. Chris showed up with his pickup like he always does, with coffee he swears is stronger because it lives in a thermos. "You moving?" he asked. "Just moving the bullseye," I said. We lifted a better desk into the bed and tied down a rug that tried to leave us on the interstate. There's a particular conversation men our age have, half jokes, half inventory. He asked if I was okay. I said I was building toward it. He nodded, like a man who has found the right wrench at the right time. We carried everything inside during a gap between Natalie's meetings. I didn't sneak. I didn't explain. I just set the desk against the wall and rolled the rug flat, smoothing the corners with my foot. When we were done, Chris stood in the doorway, hands on his hips, like a foreman signing off. "You need anything else?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. "A door that listens." He laughed. "We can install that too." I added a short shelf, a small plant that forgives, and the kind of lamp you'd see in a motel that got its act together. When I clicked it on, the room turned warm in a way the hallway didn't. Lighting is honesty with manners. It tells the truth without pointing. I sat at the desk and lined up a pen, a yellow pad, and the only framed picture I kept in there, Natalie and me, younger, at the fair. I didn't put it face down. I didn't put it away. I let it sit with the rest of the room, part of the story, not the end of it. Later, when the house got loud with a conference call and a blender, I closed the door and let the lamp do its work. Soft light on a clean surface. If you've ever put order where there wasn't any, you know the feeling. The glow didn't fix us. It fixed the hour, and sometimes that's enough. The door frame had good bones. I measured twice the way every dad on my block taught me. The keypad lock wasn't a fortress. It was a boundary with batteries. I drilled slow, mindful of splinters and the cost of mistakes. Click, seat, tighten. The first beep sounded like a small animal learning its name. I punched in a code I could remember if I ever forgot who I was. When the bolt slid home, the room felt different, like a sentence with a period finally in place. Natalie appeared as if the beep had called her. "Why is there a lock?" she asked. "Privacy," I said. One word, no sermon. She stared at the keypad like it had insulted her. I didn't perform. I just stood there, steady, a man in his own doorway. The bolt thumped again when I tested it, and that little sound shot through the house. Not victory, not defiance, just the sound of enough. The knocks came fast, the way rain starts when someone dares the sky. "Open this door," Natalie said, voice tight. I set the pen down and faced the wood, close enough to feel the grain. "No," I said, calm like a bank teller. "Why?" "Privacy." She tried the handle, then the old trick all couples know. Argue through the barrier, raise each other like bids. "You don't lock doors in your own house," she said. "We're correcting that policy," I said. I could hear the text chime from her phone, the quick breath before another volley. Then the footsteps faded. I waited. Silence can be louder than shouting. It makes you hear yourself. I sat back at the desk and wrote the words I needed to remember. Boundaries are not an insult. A minute later, my phone buzzed. "Chris. Keypad installed?" I sent a photo. He replied with a thumbs up and a joke about batteries. I smiled for the first time that day. 10 minutes later, the theater opened. Natalie called her mom, Helen, on speaker, a move I knew too well. "He put a lock on the guest room," she announced, as if describing a crime scene. Helen's voice boomed like a radio in a garage. "Why would he do that?" Natalie said. "Because he's hiding." "From what?" Helen asked. "From apologizing." Helen paused. "For what?" The house held its breath. Natalie reached for the earlier script. "He flirted with the neighbor." Another pause, longer. "What did he do?" Helen asked. "He carried a box." Even the fridge sounded embarrassed. "Honey," Helen said gently, "maybe apologize?" That's when Natalie ended the call. The silence afterward didn't feel like victory. It felt like when a ladder slips one rung, your stomach drops, and you grab something true. I wrote another line on the yellow pad. I will not be bullied into a confession that erases me. She stood in the doorway again, arms crossed, eyes sharp. So now my mother is on your side? I shook my head. There aren't sides, I said. There's what happened. She stared past me into the room as if the furniture had betrayed her. This is for guests, she said. It's for sanity, I said. And last I checked, I live here. She tried the handle like maybe the mechanism had changed its mind. It hadn't. You're being ridiculous, she said. I'm being specific, I answered, keeping my voice even. That line mattered to me. Specific beats ridiculous every time. She turned and walked away, the kind of exit that expects a chase. I didn't chase. I cleaned my coffee ring from the desk, sat down, and opened a blank document. I didn't know what I would write yet, but I knew who would write it, the version of me that refuses to disappear. The doorbell rang like a punchline. The memory foam mattress arrived, queen size, promise in a box. The delivery guy was the age of my first real boss, and he made the same sound my boss made when a project finally clicked. There we go. We wrestled it down the hall like a sofa through a college apartment, bumped a frame, apologized to no one, and set it to breathe. When he left, I stood in the doorway, hands on hips, thinking about the first decent night's sleep I might earn. Natalie passed by again and watched from the hall. How much was that? She asked. From my personal account, I said. That was the truth I needed to say out loud. Not marital funds, not some sneaky theft, my money, my back, my bed. She made a noise people make when a coupon doesn't apply. I closed the door and let the mattress rise, slow as forgiveness, steady as a plan. I added a cheap microwave and a shelf that would never make a magazine but would hold what it needed to hold. A couple of band posters from years that felt simpler, concerts where I stood too long on concrete and didn't complain. I stuck them up with care, not nostalgia. It wasn't about pretending I was 25. It was about claiming a square of peace inside the storm. If you've ever made a hospital room look less like a hospital, you understand. Small comforts are not small. Natalie's footsteps paused again. You're nesting, she said. I'm stabilizing, I answered. Words matter. Nesting is cute until it's used to belittle. Stabilizing is something grown-ups do when the bridge shakes. I sat in the recliner, turned on the TV to a ball game's quiet inning, and let the commentators talk about men my age who still try. The score didn't matter. The noise did. It felt like company that didn't need anything from me. Chris texted, "Game tonight?" I sent the door photo and a time. He came over with a grin and a six-pack of the beer we always pretend we don't drink anymore. We queued up a game and fell into the easy rhythm of men who've known each other long enough to skip explanations. Natalie poked her head in. House rules? She asked. My room, my rules, I said, light but clear. She frowned at the phrase and disappeared. On screen, my character moved like a man who'd stretched. In the room, I could breathe. We laughed at the kind of jokes you can only tell someone who helped you move in August. When Chris left, he clapped my shoulder the way fathers do at graduations. Proud of you, he said. I didn't ask for what. I knew. For standing without shouting. For choosing build over break. When the door shut behind him, the bolt slid home and sounded like sleep. The first night she didn't cook, it wasn't about food. Married folks over 30 know the language. You stop setting a plate to say, you're on your own. I opened the fridge and saw a neat row of containers, none with my name. Lemon chicken for later, a post-it that said meeting, and a silence that hummed. I wasn't helpless, I just hadn't needed to be. I boiled pasta, oversalted it like a rookie, and ate standing up at the counter the way men do on moving day. The fork clinked like a clock. I washed the dish, dried it, and thought about every dad I've seen make eggs at midnight because pride had a schedule. That's when I decided this wouldn't be punishment. It would be practice. I wrote a list. Groceries, simple recipes, containers that actually seal. If dinner was going to be a message, I'd answer in a language that feeds you. Sunday turned into a small assembly line. Chicken thighs, olive oil, salt that costs too much, pepper that doesn't. I chopped broccoli the way YouTube taught me. Tuck the fingers, keep the tips. The microwave hummed like a reliable neighbor. The air fryer whispered like a promise. Older backs like counters at the right height. I moved the cutting board where my shoulders could forgive me. I portioned meals into containers like a man packing a week into something manageable. Natalie walked through and glanced at the labels. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Domestic, she said, not kindly. Adult, I said, not loudly. There's a truth you learn with age. Food tastes better when you chose dignity with it. That night I ate in my room, game muted, fork scraping the bottom of a container that felt like a small win. The microwave beeped once, polite as a doorman. I realized I hadn't asked permission to be okay. 2 days later, the laundry basket staged a quiet protest. My side stayed full. Socks made their own neighborhood. I got the message. I also got online. Craigslist still works if you can read between the lines and lift with your legs. I found a compact washer-dryer combo that would fit under the window if I promised not to breathe for a second while we slid it in. Chris brought the truck. I brought cash and 2 straps we never trust. We grunted it up the steps the way men our age lift, carefully, with a short prayer for knees. When the first cycle spun, I watched through the little glass like a kid at an aquarium. Clean shirts, warm towels, proof that I could keep myself whole without begging for quarters of kindness. Natalie walked by, heard the spin, and said, "That's ridiculous." I pointed at the drum, steady and sure. "It's responsibility," I said. The machine clicked over to dry like a small applause. If she wanted the master bathroom completely, I could read that sentence too. I moved my razor, toothbrush, and the cologne I only wear for weddings to the hall bath outside my door. The first test was, let's call it convincing. I set a small diffuser on the shelf, ran steam for a minute, and felt the room change from spare to spa. The kind of upgrade older couples appreciate when a hotel surprises you. Natalie noticed, of course. "So you're making your own bathroom now?" She said it like I'd built a secret wing. "I'm making mine functional," I answered. "You claimed yours." She looked down the hall toward the master suite and back at the eucalyptus curl. "This is petty," she said. "This is preparation," I said. The steam thinned, and with it, the part of me that still asked for permission. Anger changed its clothes. It wasn't shouting. It was the way she shut drawers or set a glass down harder than physics required. If you've been married a while, you can hear emotion by weight. She walked past the door, saw the folded towels, the little stool for tying shoes, the rug that doesn't curl, and something snapped. "You're acting like you live alone," she said. I see how being banished for a kindness was hurtful too. She asked about my intent with the lock. "Same as a bathroom door," I said. "Privacy." Natalie folded her arms. "It's a guest room," she said. "It's my room until I'm allowed back in ours," I answered. Monica tilted her head, as if that was a trick. "So you're retaliating," she said. "I'm adapting," I said. The word sat between us like an exhibit. Monica wrote it down as if it mattered because it did. Monica tried to steer. "What outcome would feel fair?" she asked. Fair is a word adults use when they know no one will be happy. I said, acknowledgement, that I didn't flirt, that the punishment didn't fit the rumor. Natalie said, "I saw what I saw." I said, "Then say what you saw." She didn't. Monica pivoted to household impact, a phrase that makes regular people nap. I kept it simple. I clean my space, I pay my share, I cook my food, I lock my door. Nothing I do stops her from living her life. Natalie looked at Monica for backup. Monica said, "Could you remove the lock?" "Could she remove the condition?" I asked. The silence told the truth before anyone else did. We ended without hugs. Monica left with a neutral goodbye, the kind you give clients, not family. When the door closed, I felt both lighter and older. Not every meeting is a solution. Some are proof you're not crazy. A day later, Natalie found her leverage. "I'm taking the master bathroom completely," she announced, like a press release. "You can use the hall bath." I nodded. "Okay." She blinked. "No fight?" "Okay. That's it?" "That's it." I moved what was left, comb, aspirin, the little jar of coins that's followed me since college. She claimed the marble in the mirrors with lights that flatter. I took the hallway with the vent that squeaks if you don't nudge it right. There's a relief in not chasing the shiny thing. Men learn this with cars and careers. The trim level isn't the ride. That night, I showered under the rain head I installed myself, stepped onto a mat that held, and thought about how many arguments start with territory and end with exhaustion. If she wanted to win, I could let her have the room. I'd take the function. The water ran steady, and in the sound of it, I heard myself choosing. I finished what I started. Hooks lined up like soldiers. A small cabinet held the stuff men pretend we don't need. Good lotion, decent razor blades, pills for a knee that announces the weather. I hung a simple print that reminded me of the coast my dad loved and wiped the mirror until it showed a face without steam or story. When I turned the diffuser on, eucalyptus and cedar made the hall smell like a Saturday without chores. Natalie walked by and stopped. "You're ridiculous," she whispered, almost to herself. "No," I said. "I'm consistent." Consistency is the thing that gets you through mortgages and braces and bosses who discover email at 9 p.m. He replied with Hotel 5 stars and a dumb emoji that made me laugh. It's funny how a laugh in an empty room can sound like hope with a light on. I started keeping a folder, not to weaponize, but to remember. Screenshots where she called it punishment, photos of the tampered lock, the invoice for the washer-dryer, the order confirmations for things I paid with my own account. Men over 30 learn that memory lies when stress drives. Paper doesn't. I wasn't building a case to crush her. I was building a spine for myself. When the house got loud again, wine night, laughter with edges, I put in earplugs, turned on the fan, and let the air move. Anger wants an audience. Proof doesn't care. I wrote on the yellow pad, "Receipts, not rage." That became the rule. When Natalie knocked that night, I opened the door and stood in the frame I had measured. "What now?" she asked, tired. "We tell the truth," I said, "or we keep building separate lives in the same square footage." She didn't answer. After a long breath, she turned away. The bolts settled. So did I. I knew before I saw it. The keypad hung crooked, screws bright like baby teeth. The bolt plate was scuffed, and the door eased open without the code, like someone had taught it bad manners. Inside, the mini fridge sat unplugged, food sweating itself useless. The bed was stripped, wires tugged loose from the TV, desk drawers nudged open the way a hotel maid checks for jewelry. I didn't count to 10. I didn't raise my voice. I said one word to the empty room. "Okay." Not surrender. Documentation. I snapped photos. The bent latch, the cord left dangling, the timestamp on the dead fridge. I took a slow lap with my phone video rolling, narrating like a claims adjuster. Lock tampered. Items moved. No permission. When I finished, I plugged the fridge back in, spread a clean sheet, and sat on the edge of the bed. Some moments make you smaller. This one made me specific. The house was now a file. I would fill it. I called Chris, then I called a lawyer. Chris said, "You good?" I said, "Better if I'm boring." The attorney, Margaret Lane, recommended by a guy who hates drama, answered on the second ring. I told her the short version, then the details, then the part where silence had stopped working. She didn't gasp. Grown-ups who work with wrecks rarely do. "You're not divorcing today," she said. "You're drawing lines." She outlined legal separation, exclusive use, and no interference orders in words that didn't need a dictionary. "We'll memorialize boundaries," she said, "so you're not negotiating at the doorframe." I liked that sentence. It sounded like a carpenter and a judge had lunch. She emailed me a checklist: photos, receipts, texts where she called it punishment, police incident number from the night a tired officer told us to get counseling. "Quiet helps your case," Margaret said. "Paper wins more than volume." I hung up and felt taller without standing. Printers are never ready when real life needs them. Mine made that cough printers make when they're deciding whether to be useful. Eventually, papers slid out. Petition for legal separation, request for exclusive use of the guest room, inventory of personal items, notice against tampering with locks and utilities. I read every line like a man counting pills. The language was dry, but that's what I wanted. Dry beats dramatic. I signed where Margaret flagged, initialed the margins that mattered, and clipped the stack the way my dad clipped receipts before tax day. I added a simple cover note in plain English. I will not apologize for something I didn't do. I will respect your space. Respect mine. I put the file in a manila folder and labeled it in block letters. Boundaries. When the courier came for service, he looked like a kid running errands for gravity. Good luck, he said. I nodded. Luck was nice. Paper was better. I walked the house like a claims guy, not a husband. Hall camera synced. Check. Time-stamped shots of the keypad. Check. Screenshots of texts where punishment and guest room sat in black and white. Check. I backed everything up to a drive that didn't live in the house and emailed copies to myself because email may be terrible, but it's dependable at being there. I recorded a short video diary. Date, time, what changed, what I did. Men our age learn this the hard way. Memory gets edited by stress. Records don't. When I finished, I put the drive in the glove box of my truck like a spare key you hope you never need. The folder on my desk grew heavy in a way that comforted me. Some people carry worry stones. I carry itemized lists. The door bolt clicked, smoother now that I'd tightened it. The sound was still small. It was also mine. That night she knocked without knocking, opened, then leaned against the frame like a magazine ad for forgiveness. Silk, perfume, the kind of look that used to short-circuit arguments. "We don't have to do this," Natalie said, voice warm like a candle. "I'm not made of stone. I'm made of history." I set the pen down and looked at her the way you look at a photo and remember the day, not the pose. "We don't," I agreed. "We could talk." She stepped in, fingertips on the shelf I had leveled by hand. "Or we could reset." There's a point in life where you understand the difference between comfort and cure. "I want a reset that starts with the truth," I said. She rolled her eyes at the word truth as if it were old furniture. "You always need a spreadsheet," she said. "No," I said, softer. "I need respect." The dress didn't flinch, but the moment did. She left without slamming. Progress, in lowercase. Staying steady isn't sexy. It's chicken cooling on a rack, rice in containers that stack, and a calendar block that says, course, 7 to 8 p.m. I ate at my desk with the game muted again, clicked into a project management class I'd been putting off, and let somebody younger explain a tool I already use. Halfway through, he said, "Document or it didn't happen," and I laughed at the timing. The ordinary things, meal prep, note-taking, 9 o'clock dishes, did the loud work of lowering my pulse. When your 20s are gone, you learn that peace is built, not found. Natalie passed by twice. Once she paused like she might say something new, then didn't. I didn't chase. I finished the module, washed the fork, wiped the counter. The room smelled like soap and a little victory. The only thing I wanted to escalate was my sleep score. The bolt slid, the lamp dimmed, and the foam remembered me kindly. The invite came without asking. I walked into Kayla and Jordan at our table, Natalie plating food like a host audition. "Sit," she said, sweetness with an edge. I stood by the fridge and felt the scene trying to recruit me. Kayla looked at the keypad down the hall and then at me, apologetic for a play she didn't write. Jordan offered a cautious nod, the kind men exchange when they hope a night won't explode. "Thanks," I said. "I've got plans." I lifted a protein shake like a hall pass and turned to go. "Don't be rude," Natalie said. "Rude," I said, "is inviting people into a marriage as scenery." A beat where the room remembered gravity. Kayla stood first. "We should head out," she said to Jordan, who was already halfway there in his eyes. The door closed behind them with the softest slam I've ever heard. Silence sat down where dinner should have been. Then the argument arrived. We didn't shout. Not at first. We traded closing statements, each certain the jury was reasonable. "You embarrassed me," she said. "You staged us," I said. "You're making a show of living alone," she said. "I'm living," I answered. She pointed at the keypad, at the fridge, at the posters that reminded me I used to stand closer to speakers. "This is petty," she said. "This is protection," I said. The volume rose the way storms do, quietly, then all at once. I said the line I shouldn't have. "Your mother thinks—" She cut me off with a look I've seen twice in 10 years, the one that means we're close to saying things that don't take back. I swallowed my next sentence because age teaches you how expensive certain words are. I'm done tonight, I said. I'm not, she said. And then she was, because she ran out of things to throw that wouldn't break. The next morning, her side of the closet was lighter, suitcases gone, hangers thinned. The bathroom counter looked like a hotel, absent and wiped. On the island sat a note in tidy block letters, the kind she uses for ideas that win meetings. Since you want to live alone so badly. I took a breath that reached parts of my back I'd forgotten. I didn't chase the driveway. I didn't text 20 times. I set the note under a paperweight and made coffee for one. There's a pain that yawns when a house goes quiet, the kind you feel in your shoulders first. I let it sit. Then I cleaned the sink, which is what men do when we can't fix what's bigger. I sent Margaret a message. She moved to her sister's. Margaret replied, "Document, don't narrate. We'll proceed." I looked at the guest room door and recognized something I hadn't wanted to admit. I wasn't alone. I was responsible. Margaret filed the papers. A process server did the awkward work of handing envelopes that end a chapter. I kept building the record. Dates, times, the night the lock was removed, the dinner that evacuated itself, the exit with luggage. I added photos of the attic tape line I'd used to split storage, receipts for the washer-dryer and the diffuser and the little shelf that holds order. I wasn't curating a museum of grievances. I was writing a manual for boundaries I could live with in any house. That afternoon, I met with a therapist on video who looked like someone's wise aunt and said obvious things I needed a stranger to say. You can love someone and still refuse to be erased. When we hung up, I wrote the sentence down and left it on the desk where I would have to see it. The lamp warmed the page like a small sun. The room felt earned. She texted that night, the roller coaster kind. I miss you. You ruined everything. Just say sorry and we can forget this. 10 years will teach you the difference between a bridge and a loop. We can't forget, I typed and erased. I settled on, I won't apologize for something I didn't do. Then I put the phone face down and let the fan mix the air. A younger me would have argued until the battery died. This version of me trusts silence that holds shape. I stood in the doorway and looked at what I had built. Not a bunker, a boundary. Not a tantrum, a plan. If I caved here, the lesson would be permanent, that my name could be traded for quiet. I poured water, set it on the nightstand made of boxes I hadn't bothered to replace, and said the sentence out loud to an empty room. If I apologize for a lie, the loop never ends. The next morning, I sent Margaret the updated timeline and asked about next steps. We'll request exclusive use formally and a non-interference order, she wrote back. Keep documenting. Don't escalate. It's a boring instruction that saves lives. I walked the hall, checked the bolt, checked the fridge, checked the bathroom light. Small things in their places, proof that I could steer my side of the street. I wrote one more line on the yellow pad. I choose paper over volume. I choose function over theater. Then I cleaned the microwave because older men know how grease tells on you. When I sat to eat, the chair felt like a good decision, not a retreat. The lamp found its honest circle, and for the first time in weeks, I didn't brace for knocks I couldn't control. The war wasn't over. But I wasn't fighting ghosts anymore. I was building a record and a life that could stand up in daylight. You can hear a U-Haul before you see it, brakes that speak in groans, a ramp that clatters like a drawer full of wrenches. I looked through the front window and saw Natalie step down in sunglasses that didn't belong to this weather, followed by her brother Derek, all shoulders and certainty. The ramp slid, the door rolled up, and for a second it felt like moving day in reverse. I opened my door before they could knock. "We're taking what's mine," she said, chin high. "We'll take what's ours," I said, voice even. Derek smiled the way men smile when they think size is an argument. "Let's keep it simple," I added, and held up the folder I'd lived with for weeks. Receipts, photos, timelines. The truck idled like a witness. The house felt smaller and somehow steadier. I wasn't here to wrestle in a hallway. I was here to finish a sentence I'd been writing since the couch. We started in the living room because that's where couples pretend to agree. Natalie pointed. "Sofa, TV, the console? Half." I set the folder on the island and opened to the page with dates. "TV, bought before our wedding," I said, sliding the receipt across like a spare key. Console, your card, your purchase. Take it. She blinked at the paper like it had nerves. Derek reached for the soundbar. Not yours, I said, and laid down the delivery email with my name on it. He didn't read it. He looked at me. Put it back, I said, calm. Men over 30 understand this tone. It's the one you save for electricians and dogs near traffic. He put it back. We labeled boxes aloud. Hers, mine, shared. Like adults who know how kitchens work. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like accounting. Out the window, the U-Haul waited like a big orange period at the end of a long paragraph. Pressure came next, as it always does when facts get heavy. Derek stepped closer, chest first. You really did her wrong, he said, certainty borrowed, not earned. She kicked me out for carrying a box, I said, no heat. Oh, he laughed like I'd told a fishing story. I slid over the police incident number, the text where punishment wore black and white, the photo of the keypad hanging crooked. We're not doing court here, I added. We're doing proof. He stared at the papers like a man reading a map after insisting he didn't need one. You gonna hit me with more documents? He asked. Only as many as it takes to stop this from getting stupid, I said. The room heard itself. Even the fridge went quiet. Natalie watched us like she was seeing a new sport, one where volume loses to dates. Kitchen next, I said, and picked up a pen. We moved to the drawers where couples store their duplicates. Attics hold the truth about a home. Old paint, holiday regrets, boxes you swear you'll sort next summer. We climbed the fold-down steps, Derek first like a battering ram, me with a tape measure and a flashlight. The air tasted like dust and last year. I pointed to the silver tape line I'd laid weeks ago, right down the middle, measured to the inch. Left's yours, I said. Right's mine. He laughed, mean, then confused. Adults don't measure attics, he said. I clicked the tape back into its case and met his eyes. Adults don't measure attics, but here we are. The line shone in the light like a small truth that refused to move. Natalie crouched by her side, touching the boxes with her maiden name on the lids, and for a second the sunglasses didn't fit her face. We carried down what was hers. I carried down what was mine. The ladder creaked like a closing door that finally latched. Back in the hallway, the pile of hers looked like a life edited. The pile of mine looked like a man who labels chords. Derek wiped his hands. You done? He asked, already bored. Nearly, I said, and turned to Natalie. We're divorcing. I didn't say it like a threat or a dare. I said it like the truth on a form. She sat without meaning to, knees folding, back against the wall where we used to lean while paint dried. The sunglasses found the floor. Over this? She asked, voice small, like a radio far away. Not over a box, I said. Over what came after. Derek started to speak. I held up a hand. This isn't your line. He swallowed whatever sentence he'd borrowed and looked at the ramp like it might answer for him. The house felt taller. My voice didn't shake. Some words, when you finally say them, leave the room cleaner. Natalie tried a comeback on instinct. We should try counseling. You're being dramatic. This is fixable. I nodded at each like a man checking items that didn't ship. I'd go to counseling to end this well, I said. Not to pretend. She reached for anger and found air. The fight had been repossessed. I just wanted you to care, she said, and it wasn't a blade, it was a bruise. I did, I said. I still do. That's why I won't teach us a lie. She looked at the keypad down the hall, at the tape line, at the folder on the island, every symbol of a boundary she'd tried to rename. The U-Haul ramp clanged in the driveway as Derek closed it up, impatient with the part where feelings don't lift well. Take what you need, I said. I'll buy you out clean. The words were simple. They were also a bridge. She didn't cross it. Not that day. We carried the last box together without speaking. Photo albums, the heavy kind with real corners. On the porch, she set it down and watched a neighbor drive by slow, pretending not to look. We didn't wave. This isn't how it was supposed to go, she said. I know, I answered. Me too. For a breath, we stood like the couple on our wedding program, two silhouettes near a door, except now the door knew codes and history. Derek called from the cab, wanting the easy ending. Natalie put a hand on the box like it could warm her. "If you loved me, you'd apologize," she said, the last line from the old script. "If you loved me, you wouldn't need me to," I said, the line I'd earned. She nodded once, like a student who finally hears the right answer and hates it. The U-Haul door rolled down. The street went back to normal. Inside, the house exhaled. I stood in the doorway of the master and let quiet test the drywall. The guest room lamp glowed down the hall like a lighthouse for smaller storms. I walked both rooms slow, the bed I'd reclaimed, the chair that held me up when the couch wouldn't, the bathroom that worked because I made it work. It was never about the box. It was about respect, trust, partnership. It was about whether a man has to confess to a lie to be loved in his own home. I looked at the keypad and the tape line and the folder that felt heavier than it looked, and I understood why old guys keep toolboxes close. Not to break things, to finish them. Sometimes the smallest hills are worth dying on because they guard the mountain behind them. I turned off the lamp in the bachelor room, left the master light warm, and said it out loud so I'd hear it right. I didn't choose war. I chose boundaries, and peace came anyway. If you had to choose between keeping silent for peace or setting boundaries for respect, which would you choose? Share your answer in the comments.